Well, Jorgen, it's very nice to see you again. I trust you're keeping well.
Thank you. Yes, and nice to see you again also.
Well, it'll certainly be nice to see you again in person, maybe at our next partners meeting in Ireland. Well, maybe this year. Jorgen, how are things going in Sweden these days?
Well, I think like everywhere else, we are quite tired of the pandemic, and well, we like to talk about the life after post-COVID and how things will be done. More because we don't want to talk anymore about COVID. We're tired of that. We're ready for the next step.
So, well, let me think about what we're going to talk about then. Because I was going to ask you, what are you talking to clients the most about these days? Is it still COVID? Is it other things? What is it?
I mean, most the clients want to talk about the kind of how will their business do post-COVID, and how will they need to adapt, and will they be winners or will they need to change their business model? And then, for example, for like real estate companies, they will certainly be quite affected by the pandemic. You have maybe tech companies who have the completely right business model, while then maybe real estate and to a certain extent construction companies need to adapt to a new world, where we have the kind of concept of work from anywhere that will impact them and the entire society quite a lot. I think people want to work from where they want to live, and we have seen that already quite a lot in Sweden, as I think most countries have experienced that people tend to move out from the larger cities and live in the countryside, and now this kind of movement have been inside countries, but when the borders will open, I'm sure that there will be movement also cross border to a larger extent, which of course then leads to a number of tax questions for us tax advisors.
Well, it's really interesting, Jorgen, because your point must be right. If people can decide to move from the big cities, say Stockholm, out into the countryside, then I guess there's nothing to prevent them from moving to a totally different country with a totally different tax regime, right?
Exactly, and they might even be looking for interesting tax regimes for personal tax reasons. And that can, of course, be challenging for countries like Sweden, which is then a fairly high tax country when it comes to employment income. And how will Sweden adapt to that? But then also a lot of challenges for the companies that suddenly will have employees in a large number of countries instead of having people just in Sweden, and that will put a pressure on them when it comes to compliance and register for tax purposes then in a number of countries, and then also how should they allocate profits. I mean, they will have these significant people functions maybe all over Europe suddenly, and where will the value creation take place? It will be a lot of challenges and a lot of interesting questions for people like us.
Well, and I suppose that is an interesting point, right? I mean, as you think about it, you naturally start thinking about it from the people side. Where are people going to choose to live, or where must they live if they're stranded, say? But for corporate groups, this is going to create brand new challenges as people spread across the globe or across Europe in the European context. Just how do you keep track of folk? How do you comply with things? Are you seeing people start to think about this as the new reality now, or are we ahead of that discussion today?
I think we have. This is the new reality already. Then I mean, people are already moving a lot within Sweden, so I think that it will be natural that when the borders open, that they will move also cross-border. So I think this is happening. It's not like a future scenario. This is something that will just keep developing.
And so, Jorgen, if I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're a tax person, so I'm going to ask you about crystal ball gazing. If you had to look down the line, I don't know, 6 months, a year, what do you think the things that folk with business operations in Sweden are going to need to start to turn their mind to?
I think this, what we've just been discussing, will be one of the main items to deal with, both employees in a large number of countries, but then also as we mentioned, the question about profit allocation. I mean, that has been complicated already before COVID and before people maybe started to work from anywhere. Now it will be so much more complicated. But on the other hand, what we also, of course, see as not as a result of the pandemic, but accelerated through the pandemic, is, of course, digitalization, which may be then be the solution, or at least a tool to deal with a lot of these challenges, where you see companies digitalizing as much as possible, including taxes. And there, of course, we see a large interest from companies to try to digitalize as much as possible of the tax function. So that will, of course, also be high on the agenda for companies.
Well, it's definitely a solution, right? If you've got people moving around, to the extent you can use technology to keep better track of things, or even, frankly, to make the tax department more efficient and effective, that's got to be a way to go. Well, Jörgen, just really nice catching up with you today. It's a pleasure to see you again, and I certainly look forward to seeing you again in person. Stay healthy.
Thank you. Thank you, Rodney. Nice talking to you.